Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So today we're going to talk about a new pneumonia which has been discovered in Kazakhstan, which is said to be even more lethal than the COVID-19, and apparently the death rates are much higher. And we're also going to talk about the fact that the death rates in the USA are starting to inch up again, and not many people are talking about it. So we'll talk about what the implications are in terms of our emergency preparedness planning and what you should be doing to get ready for it. Let's get to it. Alright, so we need to take this information that I'm going to present to you today with a big grain of salt, because this is coming out of the Chinese embassy in Kazakhstan. It is coming out of a couple second and third rate media agencies, so this doesn't have the official approval of the Associated Press or the mainstream media that nobody trusts anyways yet, but I figured we should probably try to get ahead of this if it is really a thing. So let's talk a little bit about it. And of course, right after I finish making this video, I see this headline on CNN. So it looks like the mainstream is picking this up after all. Now, it should go without saying that at this point in time, we need to take everything from the mainstream media with a grain of salt, and we need to go right to the source. Unfortunately, we don't have a direct line of communication with the source of this information. So yes, to save you your breath, we're all fully aware of the shortcomings of corporate media, be it CNN, NBC, ABC, or Fox News. But this is the best information we have to go by at this point. I should also say, to the best of my knowledge, this has not been confirmed by the World Health Organization yet. But we all know sometimes their assessments lag behind because they are very data-driven and they rely on all of the physical evidence before confirming whether or not this is a real thing. So we should find out in the coming weeks anyways. Now, a statement from the embassy in China warns that the death rate for this new unknown pneumonia is much higher than coronavirus, says the local authorities that have yet to identify the cause. The Chinese embassy has described it as an unknown pneumonia, but Kazakhstani officials in the media say it's only pneumonia. Now, one look on the Mayo Clinic, and it looks like the three main causes of pneumonia are viruses, fungi, and bacteria. So it's probably one of those things, we would assume, which is contributing to the uptick, although not much is known about this yet. But here's another headline which is on the New York Times back in January 6, 2020, and it talks about how China is grappling with a mystery-like pneumonia illness. So is this history repeating? Is this a new, more lethal mutation of COVID-19, or is this something entirely different? I guess time will tell. The embassy's website goes on to say that the provinces of Atreu and Aktobe and the city of Shymkent have reported significant spikes in pneumonia cases since the middle of June. And it also notes that these cities are up to 930 miles apart, which means that there's a risk that this is in fact contagion related because of the great distance between the cases. Chinese embassy said that there's so far 500 pneumonia cases in 3 places, with over 30 people in critical condition. Now, the country as a whole saw 1,700 pneumonia deaths in the first part of the year, 628 which happened in June. This, of course, being problematic because it's not even flu season, but these pneumonia deaths are spiking in June. And just in case you thought this might be undetected COVID, due to Kazakhstan's subpar medical care system, over 1.6 million people in the country have been tested, and their testing rate is 90,000 per 1 million of the population. So almost 1 in 10 people, 14,000 tests per day are being done, which is more than France, Canada, Germany, and many other countries. There are currently 50,000 cases of COVID-19 in Kazakhstan, so we could presume that these people who are dying of this pneumonia-like illness are being tested for COVID-19 and they're testing negative, but there is a clear uptick about it. Now, I find this next piece of information rather suspicious. As of press time, more than 370 million netizens read posts with the hashtags pneumonia of uncaused origin being reported in Kazakhstan on Chinese Sina Weibo. Now, apparently this is a popular Chinese blog. So what should we make of this, knowing that right now, anyways, it's only the Chinese embassy that's reporting on this? The important thing to emphasize here is that they're saying that the fatality rate of this disease is much higher than COVID-19 now. Is that informed by scientific opinion, or is that just somebody in the embassy saying that? We really don't know at this point. And they also don't provide much information on how much higher the death rate is. They just say that there are 2 times the amount of pneumonia cases as they were last June, which would make sense if these were undetected COVID-19 cases. But why I think it's important that we keep an eye on this is because now we're going to be entering the season of second waves, and it's really important that we stay ahead of the curve if we want to be able to ride this next wave out and come out of it as physically and financially intact as possible. We can also see that right now cases in Kazakhstan are trending upwards, the highest they've ever been, and it looks like they're going to continue to go higher, and that's why they're increasing the lockdown measures which are in place there. And this is all corroborated by the president of Kazakhstan himself. So it's really hard to determine what exactly is going on here. But what we do know is that death rates are starting to climb again in the United States, and not many mainstream media agencies are talking about it. I noticed this trend starting about 3 or 4 days ago, where the deaths started to really start to hike up a bit. So I think what we're starting to see now is that the lag between cases and death rate gap is starting to close. This is also likely indicative of some healthcare overwhelm, and if this upward trend continues, many states are likely going to prolong their lockdown measures, which once again is going to have serious implications on the economy in those places. And here's another common sense observation that I haven't really heard a distinction made on most mainstream news agencies, is even Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA chairman who apparently now works for Pfizer, has said that this is now the start of the second wave, even though Fauci is saying that this is still the first wave. And I have to agree with Fauci on this one, because if you're looking at the United States as a whole, it's not a homogenous small country. This is a country which is very spread out. So you almost have to look at it on a state-by-state basis in terms of the waves. If this were the second wave, I would presume then you would see an uptick in cases in places like New York City, which you're not seeing. A second wave in the sense that the virus may have mutated to become more infectious in people that it originally wasn't infectious within, and possibly less lethal or even more lethal depending on the mutation. But so far it would appear that any place that peaked already isn't re-peaking again, so I don't think we can really call this a second wave just yet. But the bad news is that it looks like this is probably going to trend into the fall, when we may very well have a second wave. And this guy here, who predicted that the pandemic was going to get out of control back in January, infectious disease expert Dr. Gabriel Luang, he says that it's far from over and that a second wave is a statistical certainty. So what this all means, irrespective of this new mysterious pneumonia, if that's what it even is in Kazakhstan right now, if that's a more lethal version of COVID-19, I guess time will tell. But irrespective of that, it appears as though there may not be any relief from this until the end of the year. And that means that you need to make sure that you are squared away for another 6 months, because as fast as this pandemic came upon us, another one can dawn its ugly head, especially right now as the deck has been shuffled and things have been thrown out of whack by the first pandemic. I'm not sure if that makes another pandemic more or less likely, but there would be a zero element of surprise if another virus or if a more lethal strain of this COVID-19 presented itself at this point in time. So I think some of the most important things to do right now to get prepared to ride out another 6 months is, first and foremost, get your finances in order, because if there are going to be more layoffs and the economic downturn is going to deepen, that will be the first place that gets hit, is your pocketbook. Now, I am not a financial advisor, but I think diversification at this point in time is probably your safest bet. A little bit in gold, a little bit in Bitcoin, a little bit in the markets, in the pandemic stocks, spread a little all over the place if you got it. Be very wary of another stock market crash when people start to realize that these death rates are going up. And if this thing does start to spread in Kazakhstan, you know how fast the market tides are going to turn. We've seen it happen in March, and remember, we are in a FOMO emotional economic bubble right now. And as fast as that sucker shot up, it can come crashing down twice as fast. For people who are on unemployment, you're going to want to try to situate yourself in an occupation which is going to be recession proof as soon as possible, or try to explore other passive forms of income and get ahead of this while you can. I think changing our spending habits to be more frugal right now is very important. So not buying things that you don't need. I'm sure a lot of us haven't had those luxuries anyways because everything has been closed, but making sure we are budgeting, making sure we are putting away a lot of food storage, personal protective equipment, maybe starting to put a little bit extra away for extended family members and friends is not a bad idea. In some places, it's probably not too late to start a garden. I know it certainly is too late to start a garden here in Canada. And getting personal protective equipment while it's still abundant, because it is going to start to fly off the shelves again. We're only now starting to see some companies getting caught up on their orders from March. And as most of the signs indicate that this is just the eye of the storm, as I said about a month and a half ago, that we're now in the eye of the storm here. And this is a time for us to get prepared and squared away for the other side of this thing. Now, in light of all the craziness that's going on in the US, this may be a good opportunity, if there is reopenings in your region, to go and get yourself some basic firearms handling, self-defense training, and getting yourself familiar with the laws, so that if there is an altercation in the future, as a confluence of both the political thing and the COVID thing, and just the general deterioration of law and order due to the weakening relationships between the police and the public, you need to be prepared to take security into your own hands. So I would strongly advise you to get on top of these things now. Hopefully after this first wave peaks, that's it, and that this thing in Kazakhstan was nothing but overblown propaganda. But right now we have one of the top infectious disease control experts in the world who predicted the scale of this current pandemic, saying that it's almost a statistical certainty that there will be a second wave of this virus, and that it's going to be with us at least until the end of the year. So regardless of our political beliefs and our thoughts about the severity of the virus itself, a prudent prepper would prepare nonetheless. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Canadian Prepper out.